What if everything we know about trauma is wrong? We tend to associate it with the horrors of war, disasters, and violence, with life-shattering events. We think of the Twin Towers on 9/11 or images from Vietnam. But what if trauma isn't just a flash of fire, but also a quiet, slow burn? What if the real trauma isn't the blow itself, but the invisible fracture it leaves behind? And what if this fracture shapes not only our mental, but also our physical health, from chronic pain to autoimmune diseases? In popular culture, trauma is PTSD in a veteran or panic attacks in a car crash survivor. Think of John Rambo, the archetype of the traumatized soldier. Hollywood has taught us that to have trauma, you need your own personal Vietnam. This view seems logical, but it leaves out millions who suffer without a clear cause. It creates a dangerous divide, those who are entitled to their pain, and everyone else who is told to just get over it. So why, in a society obsessed with health and success, is there so much depression, anxiety, and addiction? According to the Centers for Disease Control, more than 40% of American adults report symptoms of anxiety or depression. We live in the wealthiest era in history, yet we are breaking records for diseases of despair. This contradiction is a key to understanding. Perhaps we've been looking for the cause in the wrong place. Canadian physician Dr. Gabor Maté has proposed that these problems share a single root, hidden in our collective misunderstanding of human pain. This insight didn't originate in a quiet psychoanalyst's office, but on the front lines of human suffering. For decades, Gabor Maté worked as a family doctor in Vancouver's downtown East Side, Canada's most impoverished neighborhood and the epicenter of a drug crisis. He wasn't searching for a new theory of trauma. He was simply listening to the stories of his patients, people with the most severe addictions, and there, at the very bottom of society, he began to notice a shocking pattern. He discovered that 100% of his patients with drug addictions had experienced abuse, neglect, or severe loss in childhood. For Maté, this was a moment of truth. Addiction is not a moral failing or a free choice. It is a desperate attempt at self-medication. For them, heroin wasn't a pursuit of pleasure, but an escape from unbearable internal pain. It was a kind of chemical embrace they never received as children. But this was only the beginning. Later, while working in palliative care and with general patients, Maté saw the same pattern in people with autoimmune diseases, cancer, and chronic fatigue. He noticed that many of them had spent their lives suppressing their emotions to be agreeable and accommodating to others. In patients with ALS, for example, he observed a common trait, a pathological inability to say no and care for themselves. Their self-sacrifice was literally killing them. Their bodies began to speak what their minds could not. For Maté, this perspective on pain was not an abstract theory. He himself is a carrier of trauma. As a Jewish infant in Nazi-occupied Budapest in 1944, he absorbed his mother's unconscious terror. To save his life, she once handed him to a stranger on the street for several weeks. He survived, but his nervous system forever imprinted that primal fear of abandonment. His work is not just observation, it is an attempt to heal both himself and the world around him. This healing begins with a simple yet revolutionary shift in understanding. Trauma, Maté argues, is not what happened to you. It's what happened inside you as a result of what happened. The event itself, a fall from a bike, parents' divorce, humiliation in class, is not the trauma. The trauma is the internal wound left behind. It's a disconnection from yourself, your feelings, and your body. Imagine a short circuit in your inner world. The life force is there, but it no longer reaches the light bulbs, your intuition, joy, and instincts. You continue to function, but you live in a perpetual twilight. How does this wound form? When a child faces unbearable pain, whether physical or emotional, their psyche does the only thing it can to survive: it shuts down feelings. This mechanism is called dissociation. In a moment of danger, it's a brilliant solution, a life raft that prevents drowning in an ocean of pain. The problem is that this safety switch, once flipped, often doesn't turn off. The person grows up, but the mechanism continues to operate, cutting them off not just from pain, but also from joy, anger, sadness, from life itself. Society is willing to acknowledge the big T trauma of war or violence, but Maté insists that so-called small t trauma can be just as devastating: constant criticism, emotional neglect, or parents who are too busy or depressed to see and mirror their child's feelings. This is confirmed by Harry Harlow's famous experiments from the 1950s. Baby monkeys consistently preferred a mother figure made of soft cloth without milk over a cold wire one that provided food. The need for comfort and connection proved stronger than hunger. For a human child, this need for attachment is as vital as food. Its absence is an existential threat. This isn't just sentimental psychology, it's neurobiology. A child's brain is shaped in direct response to its environment. If that environment is filled with stress and a lack of emotional connection, the brain adapts for survival, not for growth. The amygdala, our fear center, becomes hyperactive, while the prefrontal cortex, responsible for self-control and rational thought, develops more slowly. This isn't a character flaw, it's a biological adaptation to a dangerous world. Ultimately, early trauma becomes like a crack in the foundation of a house under construction. From the outside, it may look perfect, but the entire structure is unstable. Any of life's earthquakes, a job loss, a breakup, an illness, can lead to its collapse. And we spend our lives trying to put up expensive wallpaper in the form of antidepressants and replace the plumbing with new diets, not realizing the entire building is slowly tilting because of an invisible crack in its very foundation. We treat the symptoms without seeing the cause, but this foundational crack manifests not just in the psyche, it extends into the body's very biology. Suppressed emotions are not abstract concepts, they are biochemical processes. Constant fear or anger turns into chronic stress, which causes the body to continuously produce the hormone cortisol. Cortisol is like a fire alarm. It saves your life when there's a real fire in the house, but trauma makes that alarm blare 24/7. Eventually, the fire department, our immune system, becomes exhausted, and the constant noise of systemic inflammation begins to destroy the house from within. It is in this unceasing internal pain that the roots of addiction are found. For Maté, it's not a chase for pleasure, but a desperate search for relief. Opioids, for example, activate the same brain receptors as human love and attachment. In essence, when a person with an addiction injects heroin, they are trying to artificially synthesize the feeling of warmth and safety a child gets in a mother's arms. It is a tragic search for love in a syringe. Maté saw the same mechanism, in a different form, in patients with rheumatoid arthritis or lupus. He described a typical profile: a person who cannot say no, always puts others' needs before their own, and suppresses healthy anger. When a person systematically silences the instinct to protect their boundaries, their immune system literally goes haywire. It loses the ability to distinguish self from non-self, and the unexpressed aggression turns inward as the immune system begins to attack its own body. Maté suggests we even reconsider disorders we typically view as innate. Take attention deficit disorder, which he himself was diagnosed with. He argues it's often not a brain defect, but a brilliant adaptive mechanism. The brain of a child with ADD, according to Maté, is like a radio receiver that has learned to automatically tune out a station if the broadcast becomes too painful or boring. Inattention is the psyche's way of disconnecting from an unbearable environment. This internal map created in childhood also shapes our adult relationships. We unconsciously choose partners and create situations that replicate the dynamics of our childhood wounds. Psychologists call this repetition compulsion. Our psyche strives not for happiness, but for what is familiar. A person rejected as a child will find partners who reject them again and again because this pattern of pain feels like home. This isn't masochism, it's a desperate attempt to retake an exam you once failed. If we zoom out, we find that our entire modern culture is structured to exacerbate this trauma. A society focused on consumerism, competition, and superficial connections alienates us from each other and from our true needs. Economists Anne Case and Angus Deaton have called this an epidemic of diseases of despair, rising mortality from overdoses, suicides, and alcoholism. This is a direct consequence of a culture that sells us status and material goods instead of genuine community and meaning. This cultural disconnect is reflected in modern medicine's very approach. It asks the patient one primary question: What is wrong with you? This question immediately implies a defect, a glitch in the program, a genetic error. Medicine breaks a person down into organs and lab results, operating like a brilliant auto mechanic who sees a broken part and tries to replace or fix it. But it almost never asks what road the car was driving on or who was behind the wheel. Maté proposes we change the very lens through which we view illness. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with you?" he suggests asking, "What happened to you?" This is not just a play on words. It is a fundamental shift from pathology to compassion. It teaches us to see a symptom not as an enemy to be destroyed, but as a messenger. Depression, addiction, illness, these are the smoke pouring from under the hood. You can, of course, just smash the warning light on the dashboard by taking a pill. But a wise driver will stop and open the hood to understand what's burning in the engine. He formalized this approach into a method he calls compassionate inquiry. It's not exactly therapy. It's a way of dialoguing with yourself to bypass intellectual defenses and reach the deep, unconscious belief that formed at the moment of trauma. The childhood decision that once saved your life but is now destroying it. For instance, a child whose parents were constantly depressed might have decided, "To survive, I must be responsible for others' happiness." A brilliant strategy for a 5-year-old, and a death sentence for a 40-year-old adult. And here's the crucial point. This is not about blaming parents. They were most likely carriers of their own trauma, passed down through generations. Maté says that trauma is transmitted not genetically, but through behavior. Your parents weren't villains. They were mail carriers who simply delivered a package of pain that their own parents had handed to them. The goal is not to find someone to blame. The goal is to understand how the child perceived their actions and finally, to feel compassion for that little person inside yourself. Healing begins with acknowledging your pain without judgment. But what does this acknowledgement look like in practice? In our culture, healing is often confused with repair, an attempt to erase the past, patch up the cracks, and pretend nothing happened. Maté offers a completely different path, one that resembles the Japanese art of kintsugi, where broken pottery is mended with golden lacquer. The cracks are not hidden but highlighted, becoming part of the object's unique history and beauty. Healing is not about getting rid of the wound, but integrating the scar into your identity. It is about reconnecting with all parts of yourself, especially those we've been taught to see as broken. The first step on this path is awareness. It's the ability to notice your automatic reactions, a sudden surge of anger, a desire to hide, unexplained anxiety, and in that moment, to pause. To ask yourself a simple question: is this my adult reaction to what is happening now, or is this an echo from the past? As psychiatrist Viktor Frankl said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. Awareness is the skill of finding and widening that space, allowing you to choose a new response instead of replaying an old script. Take anger, for example. For many people, especially women, this feeling was strictly forbidden. But healthy anger is not destructive. It is the energy of protecting your boundaries. It is a powerful no. It is the immune system of the psyche. To suppress it is to voluntarily shut down your immunity. Learning to recognize this energy and express it constructively is a vital stage of healing. It is a declaration to the universe: I exist and my needs matter. But if trauma lives in the body, it must be healed through the body. Talk therapy alone is not enough. As trauma research pioneer Bessel van der Kolk says, the body keeps the score. Trauma is survival energy stuck in the nervous system that never found release. This is why body-based practices like yoga, meditation, breathwork, and somatic therapy are so important. They help the nervous system finally discharge this accumulated stress and learn to feel safe in one's own body again. All of this comes together into a single picture, a fundamental paradigm shift in health. It doesn't deny biology, but insists that our life experiences turn our genetic predispositions on or off. In essence, it asks us to move from the question, "What are your genes?" to "What is your life?" This changes everything. Imagine if our justice system asked not, "What law did you break?" but "What pain caused you to do this?" What if schools taught children emotional self-regulation alongside mathematics? This is a call to build a trauma-informed society, a society where doctors, teachers, and judges understand that behind most bad behavior lies hidden pain, and respond not with punishment, but with support. By continuing to ignore these deep roots, we are doomed to an endless battle with symptoms, building more prisons, inventing new antidepressants, and losing the war on drugs. It's like endlessly bailing water out of a boat with a hole in it instead of diving in once to patch the leak. We spend billions fighting the consequences because we are afraid to admit the truth about the causes. This is not just ineffective, it is a path to depleting our resources and human lives. Acknowledging the reality of trauma is not just humanism, it is a pragmatic survival strategy. Healing from trauma is not a selfish dive into the past. It is the most important gift we can give to ourselves, our children, and the world. It is a return to our authentic nature. In mythology, this is called the hero's journey. But Maté argues that the main dragon we must slay lives not in the external world, but within us. And we must conquer it, not with a sword, but with compassion. What if the bravest, most revolutionary thing you can do is to stop, turn to face your pain, and ask with genuine compassion, "What are you really trying to tell me?"